another Stamp It project, and I've got this gorgeous image from Saturated Canary, and this is their Steampunk girl, and she's so cute. The inspiration for this whole card, and I often get asked, you know, how do I get my ideas, so I thought, right, I will share a little bit of where I started with this. And the inspiration for this whole card came from this one piece, a roll of washi tape here, this black and white, and this is Anna Griffin's washi tape, and I used some on another card and I really liked it. What I wanted was to do like this monochrome. I thought this would be great to do the black and white, and I thought that she would be a great image because she's quite funky, so the black and white would really work, and I thought that we could do her hair using the blacks and greys and stuff. But I really felt that if we did just black and white, that it would be too monochrome, that it needed just a little pop of something. With the washi tape, it kind of all went together. So those were my two black pieces of white cardstock, which I say was from Anna Griffin. And then I've just got some regular black cardstock for my card base and any kind of borders, etc. that I wanted. Then I went through my papers and was trying to find colour. Pink was kind of standing out, that bright cerise pink, but I thought it's so common, you do that quite a lot, and I just thought I really wanted to try and do something different. And I'm really loving these greens at the moment, these lime greens, so I thought I was looking through a card pack that I have from Anna, and I will look up the name for you and put it at the bottom, but it had all sorts of real citrus image colours papers in it. It had the pink, the yellow, this beautiful green, it had all different pattern ones, beautiful floral designs, so really nice colours, but this one just kept standing out for me to go with this colour, with the black and white. I just thought it really popped, so that's what I decided to go with. So then I picked out some other bits and pieces based upon what's in my head for this design and what I did before. So I've got some beautiful flowers, some white flowers, some other flowers in the greens, I've got some black, I've got some twine and ribbon because I'm not sure which I'll go for, plus I've got the black trim, and I've got some green velvet ribbon, and I've picked up some feathers, and I've got these gorgeous feathers with these lovely patterning on there, which I really like. So they may get used, or in case I think it just doesn't need any more green, I've got this beautiful marabou feather in black, so I've got that instead, and it may be that it even works together, so I've put those there. I've got some little pins with the black pearls, I've got some black pearls, I've got some little pegs which I just used my Copics on to change the end to the green, so I've got a couple of those. And then I've got, I'm just going to pop that on top of my feathers here, I've got some other pins as well, which are these gorgeous Prima ones that are so pretty. They're like little bundles, clusters of like crystals, and they've got it in the blacks and greys or the lime greens, so again I can choose what looks better at the time. And then the last thing I've got down here at the moment, as far as I can see, obviously my washi tape, is my Spellbinders die, and this is what I'm going to use to cut my lady out. She fits perfectly in one of these, and this is your Labels 29, so that's sort of all the bits and pieces. But obviously the first thing I need to do is colour my little girl, so we're going to put all this to one side and we're going to start colouring this beautiful image, and I really love Krista Smith stuff. Okay, so here we are, and the first thing, as always, is we're going to start with the skin. It's just a personal preference. I like to get the skin down and done because then I think that the rest of it kind of all connects and you can really get to see how it's going to work together much better. It has more life to it. So I'm going to be using my normal two colours of my Copics, which is E00 Skin White and E11 Barley Beige. Now the Barley Beige is my darkest colour, so I'm not going to use very much of that. I don't want her particularly heavily dark. And for a change, I'm going to try this E50, which is an eggshell. So it's still of the E family, but it's slightly different range. But I think when I looked at it on the paper, it had quite a soft look to it. And then we've got R20, which is the blush for her cheeks, and then possibly for her lips, but we may go for a darker colour, we'll see. But at the moment we're going for E04, which is Lipstick Natural, but we'll see on that one how that goes. So let's start first with our darkest colour, which is the E11, and we're going to start on her face. Okay, so starting off with E11, we just want to create a little bit of shadow, which would be under where her hair is. So that would just create that shadow, so just a small amount, because as I said, I don't want her massively dark. And then obviously in her neck area, just down there where that would be, and then probably down here. And then we're going to swap over to the next colour, which is our Skin White E00, and then just feathering a light touch, which will blend that in. You just want to put a very small amount of ink on. You don't need to go crazy with the ink, especially if you've got good paper. There we go. And actually I don't think I needed that other colour. So the E50 I haven't needed, so we'll pop that back. And we're just going to probably leave that pretty much as it is, to be honest. The only thing I want to do is just round here where it would be a bit more shadowy. So I'm still using the E00. I'm just going to go round like that, just to create a bit of shadow just down the side of her nose there. And then I'm going to take my R20 and just create a small amount of blush on her cheeks here. And then taking back our E00, we're just going to feather in around that line so that it just stops it being a harsh blusher line. Okay, so I think before I do sort of eye makeup on her, as it were, I'm going to actually do her eyes. So these are the colours, or two of the greens, that I'm going to be using on the dress, and it's YG13 and YG01, and the actual third one I'm going to use is YG00. So the really nice lime, zesty lime greens, and I checked that they matched in. So we want the darker green up in the corners because they're going to be the darker sections, because they're under her eyelids, and then we want the paler green towards that little white spot just down there, that's the highlight. So it's popping a little bit in there, and then a little bit in there, and the same on the other side. And then just using this zesty limey green to blend it through. That will really give these eyes some pop. There we go. So I think that looks really nice. Really nice greens as well. I really like those limey greens. And then what I will do later is put the little white dots on, but I haven't got my pens to hand at the moment. So now I've got just a watercolour pencil, it's just one I had to hand, and it's nice and soft, and this is actually black, but I just want to very carefully just sketch in around her eyes, just to give the illusion that she's got some makeup on. And the reason I do the pencil rather than the pens is because, quite simply, it's softer, and it is how makeup would look, really. It would have that softer sort of powdery look, so I just think it looks better. And I think that really gives her eyes some pop. And then we're going to do the same on the other side, so I'm just going to twist that around because it's a little bit easier to do it. I'll twist that back again now so I can follow that down. And then the under the eye. want to soften that just a tiny bit around that edge there because it just went a bit hard up the top there. That's it. And then she needs a little bit more now on this one. There we go. There. So that's her eye makeup done. I think that looks really nice. And then I decided to go for a bright pink lipstick because I think the pink and the green is going to really work together nicely. So I've got RV09 and RV04. So again, we're going to go for a paler colour in the middle because that's the sort of plumpest part of her lips. So it will be further out. So it's going to be paler because the light's going to be catching that more. And then around the edges. Now I did the middle first. I don't normally use the paler colour, but I always find with the lips I tend to not do enough of the middle colour. So I thought if I did some on the middle first that would be better. And then I can go back with that colour again. Okay, so that's some popping lipstick on her there. So she's going to look a real cool chick. And then I'm just going to take my white Jelly Roll pen and I'm just going to highlight her eye. So just make sure it's coming out. And we're just going to put that white in there. And then at the end I like to put the glossy accents on these eyes because I think it just adds that little something to the eyes which really helps. So now I'm going to be doing her hair, I think. Normally I wouldn't go from the face to the hair straight away because you want to make sure that the ink has dried so that you don't get any problems, but there's been enough of a gap and it's nicely dry where I was fiddling around with the lips and eyes and things, so we've got no issue there. Now I've picked up a black. Now I've got the 10, which is the special black, but the 100 would be perfectly fine. This is just like a blackier black, so it's very nice, but the other one is perfectly fine. And then I've picked up the cool greys, so because that's a kind of more funky look, I think. And we've got C7, C5 and C3 because I didn't want to go massively light because she is meant to be having black hair. Okay, so I think that I might try and give her this ombre look by using the YG01, which I think will fit in quite nicely. So I'm going to and I probably will need to use the YG13 as well to kind of blend it into the black. So I'm going to start by doing that section because otherwise you end up not having enough left and you can always cover it over. So we need, I'm going to and then I want to add a little bit of the dark because that would be darker in here. Whoops, don't worry about where I've just gone over the edge. We'll use our blender pen to move that. And it would be darker in that section a bit. And let's make it a bit darker up here so that it blends in. And then let's just gently, just using little strokes, just blend that in. And then taking our black next, hopefully, and then at the root, let's try and get this where we need it to be so I can get my head around what I'm trying to do with this. And then our very dark, and I'm doing what I told you I don't do, which is put the lids back on, our very dark grey, which is our C7. And I'm just going over that green area a bit as well, and I'm going to take the green, I think the darker green, and just use that and blend that into that black a little. And then going back to the pale green, really blending that in. And then taking our dark grey and the black. It's not as easy as it looks because the dark colour it's hard to, you kind of want to blend it a bit more, but actually it's probably going to be quite a strong line. And just strengthening that line up a bit like that. I think it should be less actually. I think that's part of the problem. That's better. Yeah, that's better. Now let's do the, whoops, that was green. Hold on, where's black? Oh, yeah. That's better. Okay, let's put the green down for a minute. I've got a handful of pens. And then I want my next palest grey. And then the very pale grey, which is the C3. And let's then take our C7 and just blend that through a bit more. And then the C5. I think that looks better actually. Okay. And when that dries, I'll do another layer with a darker, with the darker black again. Okay, so then let's just do, we want a little bit on the end of this in the green, just up there, and whoops, and then the other green on the very tip here, and then I want my black. Ooh. And next colour, and I want my greeny colour just to pop that in, and then I'm going to go back to my black because I'm going to go to my roots here. And then my C. Seven that was, and then I'm going to go to C5, and I don't think I want the C3 on this one, and then we're going to go to the green, so this is going to be the darker green. And then, oops, and then I think we need to just pull that black down just a little bit further. There we go. I want to get my blender pen because I need to just add a little bit more definition in the hair just there. And I've got my Pro Marker one here, and it's got the fine nib on it. I'm just going to then use this, and it will add some lines because it will take some of the colour out. So it'll down her face here. And then I've got the darker grey, which I'll just pop down here as well. Okay, I think that looks better as well. Okay, yeah. So I'll just tidy that bit again on the edge there, but otherwise I think that looks so cool. I'm pleased with that. Okay, so I just used my pen here, and I've just sort of gone over like this and then smudged it with my finger just to create a couple of highlights. And I think that just again just adds some contrast into the hair and adds some highlights, which I think looks really nice, so I'm pleased with that. So we're now going to let that all dry off. Okay, so now we're going to work on her clothes, and we're going to start with this jacket here, which is really cool, and we're going to be using our cool greys. So we've got the same 3 that we had before, and our 110 black, or special black, but again you could use your normal black. So we're going to start with our darkest colour, and we're going to do the areas that will be the very darkest. So we're looking at just in here on her collar, and then pulling that around from the edges like that, and there where the creases are, that will be pretty dark as well. And then on here, now we don't want to do massive area all in one go, so now I'm going to be taking my C7 and I'm just going to go in here, and I don't want to do too much of the lighter greys if possible, because I think it'll end up too pale. So now I'm doing C5, and in fact I don't think I want my C3 at all. I think that's going to be fine because this is meant to be a black jacket, so I'm going to put my C3 down for the moment. We may want it later, but at the moment I'm happy with how that's looking. So now I'm going to take, what I do is when I'm working is I take the other colours that I'm using in my hand, so I can then just tip it, pick up the one I want, and the lids are off, ready to go. So let's take our black here, and then we want our darker grey. So that's our C7, and then our C5, and that will be the palest part, will be on top of her shoulder there, because obviously that's where the light's going to be hitting. So now going back to the black, we're going to go on to the other shoulder and do that area. That'll be darker under that lapel there. In fact, I'm going to do a little bit over this side as well. There we go. And then we're going to take the C7, and I'm not going massively over it, it's blending in nicely without that. We're just kind of feathering into that other colours, the next colour. There we go. So then we're going to move, I'm going to leave the lapels for the moment because I haven't decided what colour for sure I want those. I'm pretty certain I'll have those in the black as well. So then going back to our black here, we want to fill in some of the shapes. So I'm going to just do this section here. That's going to be pretty much in black, I think. And then here under her little boobie, we're going to do the colour, and then round this side. And then under the collar here, and a little tiny bit around that edge, because that's where the other jacket part is overlapping. So now we're going to go to the C7. Again, the darkest part is going to be just here. And then our C5 even. And then I just want to go back over with the black just to bring a little bit more of that in. Okay, and then back with our C7. That's better, I like that better. And then C5, just over the area again, just to finish that off. Just going to darken that a little at the top here. There we go. And you can see just by going over it again, we're just able to bring up a little more blackness, make it look like it's a black jacket, but parts of it are catching the light rather than a grey jacket with shadow. Okay, so this part of the jacket here is on top of the other part, so it's likely to be the lightest part. So we're going to make here dark, around here, under there, and then coming out from there. Okay, and then C7. And then our C5. Just feathering that into the other section, and then I'm going to go back with my black and just fill that in a bit more. So I want it to be nice and dark. And then C7 again. Like so, and then the C5 just to blend along that edge. And then the last thing I'll do is in a second I'll just go back over under her little boobie just to emphasize that area again, to give her shape. There we go. So I think we may need to let that dry a bit to really get that to work, but it may be alright. Okay. So we've got now like her over jacket, which we started using in the black. So again, I think I want to make that very dark, that one. I'm just trying to think. Let's do this little piece in here, because that's going to be the other side of that jacket, I guess. So let's make that nice and black. And then going in with our lightest colour on this edge, because we need to give definition. It needs to show that there is something there. So I'm going to start with this colour, and then my next darkest grey, and then the black. And then I think that's okay for the minute actually, and then we want to do the top part of her sleeves, so I'm going to do the same method again, because otherwise you're just going to lose the definition. And I think by starting with the lightest one in this case, it just helps work out where we're going a bit better. And we don't need very much of the light colour to show to make it defined. And then the black, and I will need a little black under there because it will be darker under there. And then I'll just go back with our palest colour again just to blend those in nicely. The reason I'm using the palest one is it will slightly push the black back and blend it in, so it gives a nice effect, I think. Okay, yep, that's looking good, I think. And then I want to do on here black bit, and then a little bit of black on there, and again going in with our paler colour. And I'm just going to use my finest tip of my blender pen here, just to go down this edge here where it needed actually, just to show that it was something different. Okay. That's better. Okay, much better. That's just showing that there is something underneath there, because although that should be darker really, in some ways we were losing the fact and it just made it look a strange shape. So sometimes just use a bit of, but I'll play around with it a little bit. Okay, I'm still going to leave these lapels for the moment. I'll come back to those. And I'm going to do her sleeve. Well, it's almost like a glove, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to put the dark in on this side and in the creases over here. And then we'll go to our next darkest. And then the palest. Which is slightly back to front to what we did above, so it probably would have been better if I'd done it the other way around. But anyway, I think that looks a bit strange. Let's see if I can lighten it off and change it around. So I'm just going to use my blender pen, and what I've done is I've put the lightest side in there, and then I've gone and done it the reverse on here. There we go. So then I'll go back and I'll put the black on this side, which then matches the part above, which I think will make more sense visually. Although technically it would probably be lighter over there, but anyway, not to worry. And then just blend that black in. There we go. Yeah, I think that's a bit better. And then the same again. And it's quite hard with such a dark colour to get the definition between the different areas, and to make sure that they stay clear that that's one area and that's the next area. I'm not sure I'm doing it perfectly, but as long as it looks okay, that's all that matters. Okay, let's just darken that under there. Darken that under there. Okay, that's not too bad. So I'm going to leave the buttons and the lapels for the moment, because I think I'm going to possibly put some green on there. I'm not sure that I want to do that on the lapels actually. No, I think I'll do the lapels in black. changed my mind. I'm literally not even really shading on these, I'm just completely colouring it other than where the little holes are. There we go. Yep, so I will leave the buttons though because I think they need to be in a different colour. But yeah, I'm happy with that. So now we're going to get to her skirt. So we've got all sorts of different fabrics and stuff in here, so I think we can play around and we can add a little bit of our green, which I think will be nice. So let's have a think about where we're going to add the green. I think it'd be nice to have the underskirt in the green here. I'm tempted to do the green first, even though it's a lighter colour. That's slightly worrying because of the black going on top of it, but I'm thinking that it might help, sort of where it is might help me then with the black, because I think it'd be fun to do some of the black in the stripes and things. I'm thinking of putting green up here, and I don't know, that might look... You definitely want the green underskirt. Okay, let's do our green underskirt and then we'll work from there. Okay, so I've got my 3 greens that I had before, the YG00, YG01 and YG13. So let's start with my dark colour here, which is the YG13. So we're going to put that right up the top underneath where there would be the shadowing. And just where you think it would be shadowed, which is kind of probably where these lines are, just add in this YG green. And then I'm going to take my YG01 and add that in. Now that's really more the colouring that we're going for, so I'm going to blend that into my other one, because that's more the colour, that limey green. And we just mix that in so that it blends in nicely, and then we're going to do the YG01, just any area that we just think it needs that little bit paler. There we go. Okay, I think that looks really fun. I think next time I might do a little bit less of the YG13, and I'm actually just going to go back over that a tiny bit with my blender just to blend some of that out a little, and then we'll go over it afterwards with our other colour. I just want a little bit less of it because it's a bit strong. That's it. That looks good, and it looks better in person than on the camera, I think. And then just blend that in like so. Okay, so I'm going to just use my YG01, and I'm going to put some of the buttons. Actually, I don't think that'll show. So I'm going to use the other end and use the pointy part, because sometimes that little stronger nib allows you to put the colour down. I think I need to go in with my blender pen and just take some of the colour off the buttons so that the green will show, because it's just got a bit of the black on them. So we'll come back to those in a minute. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of the green on the button here, like that. So that gives you the green on there. And I think, so I was going to do the green there. Well, I could do green on that side. I think, yes, I'll do that. That piece of fabric is green, and on the other side we'll make it the paler colour. Okay, so I'm just going to try using these two, the YG1 and the YG00, to see without the darker one, because I think I prefer that, but it may not be enough. Now we're going to need the other one. Okay, it's not quite strong enough, but I'm just going to do a lot less of it this time. A little bit in there, and now we're going to go to the YG01, just blending that in where it's got the darker bit, and up to here where the fabric's all creased together. So there's not going to be very much of the paler on this piece of fabric because it's all crumpled and creased. So, and then we'll just go at the top with our YG00. Like so. Oh, that looks really pretty. Okay, oh, and that's her hand there. She's got glove on. I didn't realise, so we must remember to do her glove in the black. That's the continuation of that glove. So I'll just come back and do that while I remember. Okay, so we're gonna down now, because of the way we've done this, the black is on the top part. Okay, and then the dark grey, C7. And then our palest of the ones that we've got here, which is C5. And just very carefully, because we don't want it to go into the other bit, and also it will just define the fingers a little bit here. There we go, perfect. Okay, and so that's good. And I think while we've got those in our hand, we will just do this little piece of fabric here. So it's going to be dark in there. So that's our black. Then our C7. And then our C5 around the edge here. There we go, and that's just bringing that into there. Let's just blend that piece out that I just did. And then where you've done the blender pen, just make sure that you leave that for a few minutes to let it do its job and dry, because otherwise when you use a colour over the top of the blender pen where you've done it there, it will actually start to move the pen that you put on. So I'm just going over that a bit more because I wanted the black to come up a little bit further. Just put that in. I'm going to take this YG13, but a very small amount, just a tiny bit at the top there, and a little bit just in here and at the top. Okay, and then my YG01. And YG00 for the final bit just down here. I think that looks nice. I like that there with the green. And then, do you know, I was going to colour that in, but that's actually her tummy. I think you could, because that looks like a little tummy button. So I think that's going to be flesh tone in there, which would work really well for what I'm wanting, because then I can make this all the black, I think, because I didn't want much green. So okay, let's now go back and do her flesh tone on her stomach there, and I'm just going to go with my E11 and E00. I'm going to do this piece first, and I'm going to do that as dark as I can get away with. So this side. Okay, so then we want my C7. I'm just going to blend that in. And then my C5. And if you see, we're following that paler line, so it's following down. So that kind of makes sense, hopefully, to the eye anyway. Okay, and then I'm just going to go back on with my black, just to add a bit more, and then my C7. I think sometimes when you've laid the first bit of colour down, you can see where you need to add it again. And then my C5, and also you're layering up the colours, so you're darkening it as well. That's it. Yeah, like that. Pleased with that. She's coming on good. I think black is probably, in my opinion, one of the hardest colours to colour with. Now I'm not going to do the colour of the piece here that's stripy because this is still wet, and I think that's going to make it fiddly to do. So I'm going to do this piece here, and I'm going to do that in the black again. So let's take, whoops, the right colour this time, our black. Now our piece here that's folded over, we've done that in with the paler grey showing, so it's working at the moment. Okay. And then the C7, you want to not leave it too long because you want the colours to blend. And then our C5. And then I'm going to go back with my C7 to darken that a bit more. And a C5 again, if I can find it. There it is. Okay. Yep, I think that looks good. Pleased with that. So now we're looking to do this piece here, I think. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to stripe it. So she's going to have black stripes and not so black stripes. So I'm going to do the black ones first. Now obviously they're not going to be 100% black, and again we want to follow that down, so this piece here is going to be the lighter one of them. So we're going to do this one first so we remember in my head what I'm doing. So I'm doing a little bit of black at the top and just feathering down, and as this is going to be my palest, it's going to have my least amount of black. And obviously it's all relative. And then we'll go back to the black again. And then the C7. And it's just feathering it all in. And then finally C5 and just feathering back. Okay. So that's really what we're going to do across all of them, but I'm going to do a couple of them a bit darker. So now we're going over this way, you can start to get a little bit darker. So for the darker ones, we'll come down just a little bit further. And I think it's going to be more dark at the top, so we're going to do the bottom part sticking out, so the light's going to be hitting it further down. So I'm just doing it like so. And then my C5 to finish. And there we go. And then on to the next one. So this one we can see with the curve, that's going to be the highest point, so that's where the light's going to really be hitting it. So we want a very small amount of the black, whoops, down here. And then a bit more, being very careful up there. And we want more up here. Okay, and then my C7. And then C5. There we go. So that gives the illusion of little curves and things in the folds. Now this one here, the next one, is going to be a lot darker because it's underneath the folds of the other piece. So we're going to be okay, and then our C7. And C5. Okay, and then the last one up this side is there, so that's probably darkish on this edge. Mind you, the way we've done it here, it's going to be darker actually, so let's take the black first of all. So it's going to be dark up here. And then I think I'll just use my C7 on this one. I don't think we need the other colour. There we go. And then we want to come around this side and finish over here. So I need my black. So here the bend's coming out here, so we're going to come further down, and the bottom part is going to be lighter, I think. So I've got my C5 in my hand now, just to do the bottom, and then I'll put my C7 in between. So that's just where it's kind of flipping up and out. And I actually want to pull this one down a bit. It's better. And then our last one just over here, whoops, and that's going to be, again, this part's going to be lighter, so let's go here with the black, and then the bottom part with our C5, and then the middle with C7. Back with the C5 just to blend that, because that didn't quite blend. Perfect. Okay, so that's looking good. Now I need to go on the stripes in between with a very pale grey. So I've got my C3 and I'm just going to see what that one looks like. I think that's still a bit dark, so let's have a look and see if we've got another one that will work. Okay, I just tidied up down here. You can see it's a bit blodgy where the black had gone over, and I'm just going to let that dry a little bit on here, but I just need to push that back where black had splodged out into the, I'd gone too low, so I'm just cleaning that up. And we're going to let that dry before we do that section, but what we do need to do is put this green back as well so that it kind of covers that. So we'll put the green in, and then a little bit of this green, and then that section at least there is done underneath. Once it's dry it'll be fine, and then here will be fine once it's dry as well, and we'll put our grey in. Now I'm going to use a flex marker for my grey shadowing on the dress, the bottom part of the dress here where the white stripes are. If you leave the stripes completely white, they'll look flat and dead, so we need to put some shading in on them. And this flex marker is blue-grey, and it's a really nice, almost not there colour. So I'm just literally going to go at the top here and a tiny bit around the bottom. And then I'm basically following the darker parts on the dress that we've already done. And then this bit down here will be more shaded all the way down because it's a darker section. Now you can almost not see that, but all of a sudden the dress has got more movement, and I think you know, it just helps. I'm just putting a little bit down here as well, just to shade this up a little bit. And again, that's just giving a bit more movement in that bottom part of the dress. So this is one of my favourite flex markers colours. I love this. I use this one all the time. I just haven't even bothered to try and find a Copic that matches because I just really like that. I'm sure there is one, but since I've got this, it's no point. Okay, so now we're going to carry on with the next section. I'm not going to do any more green on her skirt, so because I think there's more than enough. So the next bit I'm going to do, I'm going to let this settle, and I'm going to just do these. So actually we've only got two parts of fabric, although there's two sections to that, and we've got this stripy bit and this florally bit here. I may put, I'm just thinking that I might actually do this in black with a few green little flowers, but at the moment I'm going to do this stripe first. So we're going to do, let's see, let's just go. So we want a little bit of black and a little bit of black. So that's then, and then our C5, and then my sorry, that was C7, this is C5. Okay. And then I'm going to miss, whoops, let's go make that stripe a bit wider. I'm going to miss the next one. I am just going to go back on that area where I went over the line, if I can find my black. They're in my hands, you'd think it'd be easier, but anyway. And then I'll go with the C7. That's better. Okay, now we're going to do the next one, which is pretty thin, so we'll probably not need a lot. And then the C5 I'm going to try. If it's not dark enough I can always go back. Yep, that's fine. And the black again for this next section. And there. And I'm going to switch with my C5 again. There's such tiny areas, it's almost easier just to do it like that. And then the next one is this one here. And our C5 again. There we go. I'm just going to go back in that one with my C7 because that was a little bit too much. That's better. I'm not happy with that one. Let's tidy him up. That's better. Okay, and then the next one. Very thin. And the next one is this one here. And then my C7, because it's getting darker in this area, so I'm not going to do the C5. And then the very last one is going to be very dark, so I'm going to just do that completely in the black. Like so. Then we need to go back up here, so this stripe continues and is that one up there. So it's that little bit there. And there. Okay, and this bit is kind of here. They not mark these stripes as much, so I'm just making it up as I go along, really. There we go. I think that looks really good. I'm pleased with this. Okay, so let's pop that to one side, and we're going to use my gorgeous flex marker again for these bits. So this bit up here would be pretty shadowy, and down here as well underneath this other piece of fabric, because it's all wrapped around, and then a tiny bit less so down the bottom here. There we go. So it really is almost not there. I don't know if you guys can see it. So it's quite hard to see, but you can see it with the naked eye. But it's almost one of those colours that you notice when it's not there, but you don't notice it when it is there. So it's quite important to have it in place, I think. Okay, so now we're just going to do this area here, and I really think that it would be fun to try and do these green flowers if I can, but who knows. So I'm going to put them in. If we go over them, then so be it. I'm using my YG13 because it's a strong enough colour to hopefully counter the black. I'm doing the dots, but I don't think they're going to live. Frankly, I think they're going to get covered, but we'll see. I'm trying to blob them a little bit bigger than they are to give it half a chance of winning. It looks very pretty as it is, actually. I'm half tempted to leave that one like that, to be honest. It looks so pretty, rather than put the black in. Just looking at that, and I'm thinking that looks so nice just as it is. I might just leave that and just add my magic grey rather than add the black. It's just whether I want extra black there or not. I think it works without it. Let me think. I want the black. Don't feel it's balanced. I'm probably going to regret this, but anyway. Let's see. So we're just going under here to recreate that shadow, and then round here, trying valiantly to miss the little flowers. It's hard enough doing black without going around dots and things, but anyway. my C7. And then finally my C5. Although we don't want it quite at that edge, I want some black at that edge. And then we'll just go back on that edge with a bit of black. So we're taking that shadow from there over. And then bringing the C7 again that way. And then the C5 again, just in the middle here. There we go, and then my black, just again along this edge, just to really emphasize that it's a different piece of fabric in there. There we go, looking good I think. Alright, and then finally I just want to take, well finally on this piece anyway, I just want to take my green pen again and just go over the little dots to really just tidy those up. Otherwise it's looking exactly what it is, which is that I've drawn around them rather than they're actually included in the fabric. Okay, and I just want to do one more thing, and that's just a little line along here and in here on this lapel to give the edge of the lapel, which has got stitching on it anyway, and I'm just using my blender pen just to give that differentiation so that it's clear that that is a separate thing. And down here as well, so that the fabric is clear that that's different. There we go, I think that's better. Okay. So now all I need to do, I think, is just double check any areas, because it's black, that need to be tidied with my blender pen, because we want to make sure that they're, like by her gloves here, it's just a little bit messy, so I want to just pop that back into place so that it looks nice and tidy. So just taking my blender pen, I'm just going to turn that around and just going in here and just pushing that black back, just using this pen. I've got the fine point on. There we go. And I find often it looks worse before it dries, because the paper gets wet and you see what's underneath, so it kind of looks horrific. And then finally, and this often covers a multitude of sins actually, is I want to create, so she's not just floating, I want to just use my flex marker this same blue-grey one and just go around her, just creating like an outline. And as I say, this often covers a multitude of sins because you find that, you know, any little stray bits get covered up with the pen, highlighting the area. Well, it's not even highlighting, it's just giving a little border really. It's very effective. Oh, I tell you what, I've just seen, I've forgotten the buttons on my lapels, so we must go back and do those. And this just kind of grounds the image. It's really, I think, an effective way. If you're not putting in a background or anything like that, I think it stops the image still being sort of floating in the middle of the air. Okay, and before I pull back and let you see, oh, we need to go in this area here. And before I pull back, I will just do those lapels. So again, using my YG13, I am just going to pop a little bit of green. It's hardly going to show. In fact, I might just get my blender pen and just make the hole a little bigger, hopefully. Yeah, that's working. And then the same on the other side. There we go. Give that a second, and then we'll just put the green on there. And then the last thing I want to do on her after that is just put my glossy accents on her eyes. So that was that bit done. So then finally, and I think I'm going to put a little bit on her lips as well, and I'm going to use a little tool just to move things around on her eyes so that it doesn't get too gloppy. Whoops. I think that makes a big difference. Once it's dry, it really is effective to have that glossiness. And by using the tool, I can just go over it and move it into place a little bit more precisely. And then I just want a little bit on her lips, so I'm literally just going to let a little blob come out onto my tool from the bottle, and then use that to just gently move it onto the shape of her lips. And I'm thinking it would be nice on the little buttons as well. So put a tiny bit on there. And on each little button. And I think that's going to help just emphasise those a bit. Wonderful. Okay, and I've done the button further down already. So now what we need to do is let that completely dry, both the ink and the glossy accents, and then we're going to use our spellbinders dies to cut her out. So I think she looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm really pleased with how that's turned out, and I love the green. I'm happy with it. There's just enough of that for me. I'm really pleased that I realised that was her tummy, because I think I was thinking I was going to have to put green there, and I thought I was a bit worried it was too much, but I didn't want to put black right next to that other black there. So I'm really happy with that. So I'll come back to you when that's all dry and we'll carry on.